Good evening, I'm Gauri Dwivedi and welcome to this very special show on the mega spectrum sale that begins tomorrow. While the government is putting record quantum of airwaves for sale, the auction will take place in 7 bands across 2G, 3G and 4G. But most importantly, for the very first time, 700 megahertz band considered to be the most precious globally and crucial for 4G, 4A will in fact be sold, but at prices that industry feels are absolutely unviable. There's a lot at stake, not just for the industry, which gets a chance to plug gaps in its spectrum portfolio, but also the government, which is, of course, hoping to rake in close to 56,000 crore rupees from sale of airwaves in this very financial year. In fact, as the spectrum auction begins tomorrow, putting on sale the largest quantum of spectrum ever, the government is fully aware that a large part of the offerings may in fact remain unsold, as telecom companies have maintained that pricing for crucial bands like 700 megahertz is absolutely all wrong. Here's a slice of that exclusive conversation with Telecom Secretary J.S. Deepak. Listen in.
This spectrum, which we are going to auction 2,350 megahertz of spectrum, provides a choice to operators to buy and pick what they don't have to complete the gaps in their bouquet, and once and for all it will eliminate the issue and the problem of spectrum scarcity in the Indian telecom space.
It really looks like this auction may actually be a very tepid affair, and I'll tell you why I'm saying that, because if you look at Idea's EMD, it's actually half of what it was in the previous auction. Likewise for Bharti, it is 2,000 this year and it was actually upwards of 4,300 crore last year. Compare the fact that this time there is more spectrum being put up for table. So clearly a very tepid auction may actually be what we are staring at.
All the 7 operators who are major operators in the country are participating in the auctions, depending upon their needs, and they will participate to different extents. So while there's a lot of spectrum, supply is large and the government has not sought to profiteer from creating a spectrum scarcity, they have a choice of bidding, and there would be competition in many blocks for which there is great demand.
Let's now talk about the 700 megahertz band. A lot has been talked about. Every analyst worth his salt, to tallest leaders in the sector, they have all come and said that the pricing is all wrong. In your assessment, do you think 5 megahertz should be closer to 60,000 crore for 700 megahertz?
The reserve price for a block of 700 megahertz spectrum has been determined by TRAI on the basis of consultations. TRAI has recommended a price of about 57,500 crores per block. This is expensive spectrum, but then if you look at the characteristics of 700 megahertz spectrum, it is by far the best spectrum that we have today anywhere in the world in the communication space.
Let's get you the other big voice from the government. Telecom Minister Manoj Sinha telling ET now that the industry should make the most of this opportunity to buy spectrum, as after this there will not be a sale of airwaves anytime soon. Listen in.
एक बड़ी अपॉर्चुनिटी है, खासतौर से टेलीकॉम सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स को, जो एक शिकायत होती थी कि स्पेक्ट्रम की कमी है वो दूर हो जाएगी। जैसा हमने पहले भरोसा दिया है कि पहले नीलामी के बाद काफ़ी समय लगता था, तो हमने ये कहा कि 1 महीने के अंदर हम स्पेक्ट्रम दे भी देंगे जी। और तीसरी बात मैं ये कहना चाहता हूँ कि शायद इसके बाद काफ़ी इंतज़ार करना पड़ेगा।
Now let's take this discussion forward, and we have an esteemed panel of guests. Joining me are Rajan Mathews, Director General of COAI, Sanjay Kapoor, former CEO of Bharti Airtel, Prashant Sighal, partner at ENY, and Naveen Kulkarni, co-head of research at Phillip Capital, joining me on this show. Gentlemen, many thanks for taking out the time on this debate. In fact, my first question is to Sanjay Kapoor. Sanjay, you've been at the helm of affairs at Bharti Airtel when auctions were conducted, if my memory serves me right, in 2012. This time around, what really is the distinguishing feature of this auction is that there is no survival at stake right now. There is no renewal spectrum that companies must buy back. So to that extent, this is likely to be a fairly tepid affair. Don't you agree?
Yes, Gauri, I agree that it's too early to begin to count your chickens. Let them hatch. And a few things that are very different this auction compared to the previous one and the first and foremost is that there is no embargo or artificial scarcity of spectrum, and therefore enough is available in every band, and the incumbents and the challengers all have a lot of choice to make from. And therefore, the real law of diminishing marginal utility begins to play its role, which it did not in a very scarce environment. While I say that, it's also an auction where there's a new challenger in the market who wants to at least position himself as probably somebody who's going to be bidding here with the highest possible earnest money secured for these auctions. But my own take is that in form of that challenger, what he would end up doing in these auctions is to make sure that he strengthens his in-building coverage. And therefore, a sub-gigahertz, he's already taken a position on 800 and 850. So I think if he strengthens that block, then I think that could be a core strategy for him. But for him to go and back a 700 megahertz band and really fight it out in this auction at that price may be out of contention, because it doesn't make sense to create yet another ecosystem. There's then the biggest player in the market, which is Bharti Airtel, which again, according to me, will be very, very careful and strategic in what they really opt for. And most of what they'll opt for is to augment their existing capabilities, to bring in contiguity in their spectrum and better quality. I think the two guys to watch are going to be Idea and Voda, who are going to take special positions in this market on data, because they have not taken positions on data transformation. Whether they bet on 3G or 4G is what will determine the tepidness of this auction. But I believe there is so much available that really nobody is going to go gangbusters on bidding out of ordinary during this auction. So yes, overall basis, it doesn't look like an auction of the previous types where people will go absolutely berserk on bidding. I think lots is available, but I think these are the four big players. The rest of the players will bid only for survival.
Right. Fair enough. Naveen Kulkarni, let me bring you in this discussion. You agree with Sanjay that the fact that it's not a scarcity-induced auction will influence behavior of bidders, and they are bound to be very less aggressive than in previous auctions?
See, there are two reasons why bidders will be less aggressive. One reason is, if you look at the prior options, the prior auction was when there was a case of renewal for telecom operators. So, for example, Bharti was renewing its 900 megahertz where it was expiring in 2014-15. But this time there is no renewals involved. So mostly whatever spectrum that operators want to buy, that is for growth, that is not for business continuity. So in that sense, their bidding will also be less aggressive, right? So growth is what you can calibrate, right? How much growth you want and how much money you want to invest. If the price goes out of hand, then you always have an option of not buying spectrum. But in case of business continuity, you are left with no options. You have to buy at whatever price that is available. So 900 megahertz auction was quite feverish because of that.
Rajan Mathews, let me bring you in this discussion now. A lot has been talked about as far as the 700 megahertz is concerned. You yourself have said that pricing is all wrong. Do you expect anybody to actually buy 700, or it will be a case of no takers for that very, very crucial 700 megahertz band?
So Gauri, being October 1, the date of auspiciousness for the commencement of the auctions, I must bid the DOT the best of luck. I think they've done everything right this time. Perhaps the only thing missing was the pricing on 700. So first of all, the best of luck to the DOT. I wish that they get to near the amounts that they have put up there as expected. Getting to the 700, we've said all along that the pricing of 700 marked off of 4 times the 1800 was not exactly the right way to go about it. If you look at the earnest money put down, the only real person that could have a chance at bidding for a pan-India 700 is Reliance Jio. And the risk there is that if Reliance Jio does go ahead, and you have to do it on the first round, because on the first round, 80% of your earnest money has got to be put into play. So if that is the case and you start bidding on 700, you get pretty locked in and you get locked out of the other bands. I'm not necessarily sure that that's Jio's intent. Possible, but by all instances that's not. So therefore 700 is the real challenge, both in terms of pickup because of the pricing.
Right. Prashant Sighal, let me get you in this discussion now. Let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that, of course, is Reliance Jio. Everybody has spoken that with such a large EMD as compared to its competitors, Reliance Jio really is best positioned to buy 700 megahertz. Do you expect Reliance Jio to be the most aggressive bidder in these auctions?
So Gauri, aggressive, I mean obviously they've put in the most EMD. 700, there are 5 megahertz, 7 blocks available of 5 megahertz each. If they go and block themselves in on the 700 megahertz, I don't think there'll be any bidding left. I think I would think that there may be some bidding on 700, maybe some circles, and not really bidding because there is enough available. There's no artificial scarcity. So you may see some of the C category circles being taken over on 700 by some of the operators. I think there may be some bidding on 1800. There is still some renewal spectrum or license expiry coming in September 17, even though by the number 5, number 6, number 7 operators. So you may see some traction there, and there is if you look at the 1800 band, I mean some of the circles have got the availability of spectrum to be less than 5 megahertz, so there may be some intensity there. Otherwise, this auction should really get over in in 2 or 3 days at best. So just to come back, I would think that from a EMD perspective, if they go ahead, then they'll block themselves out in the second round of bidding. Don't really think that anybody's going to go after a 700 megahertz all India play. This is at 55,000 crores or 58,000 crores, and if you just look at it over a period of 20 years where you have to fund this and you have to service it, you would have a cost of almost 5,000 crores a year, and in order to meet that cost of 5,000 crores a year, you need to generate an EBITDA of about 5,000 crores a year or 6,000 crores a year, maybe more, because you also have to pay capex cost. And in order to do that, even at current levels, with a 30% EBITDA or a 40% EBITDA, which is one of the best operators, you need to get to a top line of 26,000 crores or maybe 30,000 crores. So it doesn't make business sense to bid for 700 at this price, and I think barring a few, as I mentioned, few C category circles where you may see some offtake, I don't think AB will see any traction on 700 megahertz. It just doesn't meet the ROI or the economics at this stage.
Right. Right. Sanjay, if one were to really talk about in terms of specifics, this auction comes after Reliance Jio's launch. Everybody knows that the spectrum footprint of Reliance Jio is much superior than players like Vodafone and an Idea. You did mention that, what will be their strategy really could be the big highlight of this auction. But in a sense, do you think this could really separate the men from the boys, so to say? Those with deep pockets, those willing to pump in money into this sector are the ones that are likely to survive?
Undoubtedly, Gauri, this is indeed a big boys game, and I don't think you need these auctions to determine that. I think much before these auctions, the top 4 players in this market have already been identified, and they are the ones who've put in earnest money, serious enough to take this game to the next level. Even within these 4, the ones with lighter balance sheets are going to find it very tough to sustain this game on a long-term basis. If you look at the global scenario and what's happening across the globe, clearly 50, 60, 80 megs of spectrum don't turn out to be enough. We have been reading that even China is now facing a spectrum crunch with the largest operators there. Can you imagine if that is the plight of data going forward, then the game has just about begun. And taking the benchmarks of investments being made in USA, in Korea, in Japan, in China, these are all data-centric nations. I think India has just seen tip of the iceberg. And therefore, this is a game which requires serious thinking and serious investments. The next round, when everybody talks about 5Gs, is all about devices. That's about a new ecosystem that will get created. And that's not very far away. Next 4 years, 5 years, we'll be talking about that on a very pragmatic ground. So I think given all this, this is not a game to be played by people with either weak balance sheets or weak hearts. This is definitely a game which requires a huge amount of investment, and India, which has invested behind spectrum but has not necessarily invested behind consumer experience, is going to see a lot of challenge coming on that front. Our backhaul is still very weak for a data transformation across the country. Even the challenger, as much as he might claim on the backhaul, I think there's still a lot of road to be covered. And incumbents really have a lot of catch up to be done on that ground. And without a very solid fiber backhaul, I don't think this game can be played on a long-term basis. So I guess this is a game which requires serious commitments. And I think very clearly going forward, you will see top 2 players emerging, and then the third and the fourth who will try to chase up. But I don't think more than that will really be serious players in this market going forward.
Fair enough. Naveen, Kulkarni, if we were to talk about specific companies, one wonders, as far as Idea Cellular is concerned, it obviously has a smaller balance sheet compared to the top 2 in the sector. Do you think it will be able to raise enough cash to compete with a rival like Reliance Jio, or there has to be a plan B for Idea Cellular, maybe even look at some sort of an M&A going forward? Naveen, Kulkarni?
See, Idea Cellular has always been one of those operators who has been very, very efficient in terms of capital allocation. So there, I think just-in-time spectrum is what I think their strategy is. Currently, the market is still evolving on 4G. So their strategy will be to be present on all the bands in their leadership circles, which are their 8 circles. Rest of India, they will either have a 3G or a 4G play. 3G play still has a decent uptake because the handset ecosystem is fairly evolved on 3G. So they need around 5 circles where they would want to complete their data footprint either on 3G or 4G, which also includes Mumbai circle. Once they do that, I think they should be in a fairly decent position to defend their market share. See, because customer is not necessarily bothered about what technology is being offered. I think what customer eventually bothers about is the experience that is being provided. And in the current state of things, I would say that if you have a decent 3G network, then the consumer experience can also be pretty good. 4G helps, which is more of a capacity spectrum. In the leadership circles, I would definitely believe that Idea Cellular will be having even 4G footprint, which is UP West and Gujarat. They will buy spectrum in those 2 circles. Rest of the circle, they will have a data footprint on 3G or 4G, and I think that should be sufficient for the next 2 odd years or so.
Rajan Mathews, let's talk about government proceeds. The target that the government has set for itself is 56,000 crore rupees in terms of the upfront payment. Overall value, of course, of the spectrum is 5.5 lakh crore. But, if one were to really look at the government proceeds previous year, when the auction was actually touted to be successful, it was 21,000 crore rupees. Is it possible that the government will be able to meet its target of 56,000 crore rupees, or is it really going to be a failure as far as government proceeds are concerned?
That 55,000 crore rupees is a bit of a stretch unless something goes wild in terms of the bidding for some of the bands, which obviously is not expected because of the quantum of spectrum that is available. So yes, that is going to be a bit of a stretch. I think somewhere in the 35,000 crore rupee band is feasible. 55 is going to be a real stretch.
Right. Prashant, your thoughts on that, could this auction really be a failure as far as the government is concerned and its proceeds are concerned?
I think absolutely, Gauri. I think if you look at it, with the EMDs which have come in, I think the maximum bidding can go up to 170, 180,000 crores. So clearly you are not going to meet your 5 lakh crore target, which is available for sale. And I think based on the past experiences that we've had in India on auctions, you find that not more than 50% or between 50 and 60% of what is the potential value that you can go and buy is what you end up buying. So what I'm alluding to is that you would get to a 75,000 crore overall kitty kind of a collection, which would be fairly low from a 56,000 crore perspective. 56,000 crores is the cash collection that the government is expecting, whereas the total bid price and the cleared price will be just 76,000 crores. At least that's what I would think, keeping in mind the EMDs which have been really put in by the operators, the need of the sector or the market. I think we are also reading too much on 4G. Let's also remember that even though the technology cycles are shortening, and there's no doubt about it, it's not that suddenly we will leapfrog from 2.5G to 4G and 3G will be completely redundant. I mean, we've got a huge country which has to be covered. From a subscriber perspective, I totally agree that the subscriber really doesn't care about 3G, 4G, 2G till the time the experience is good and the network quality or coverage is good. And as you move from urban to semi-urban to rural, the quality quotient or expectation further comes down. So I would think that at least for the next few years we will see evolution of 4G. We will see more penetration on 3G. The data game would start. So this is not going to be the last auction. This is not going to be the auction where people are going to bid irrationally in any form or way. I heard the minister earlier saying that there wouldn't be any auction in the next 1 or 2 years, but I'm sure if there's so much of spectrum which would be available, and if 4G takes off, then the spectrum may come back for an auction sooner than that period of time.
Fair enough. So this may not be the only opportunity that telecom companies can have. They should wait and watch, is what you're saying. Sanjay Kapoor, let me just quickly ask you one question. You did allude to the fact that at the end of the day, it will just be top 2 operators, and then the third and the fourth operator also, trying to catch up with the market leaders. In your sense, do you think auction will expedite the entire process of consolidation?
Yes, I think consolidation within consolidation will happen. And we have seen the world over, although there are 4 or 5 operators in some parts of the world, most parts of the world only have 3 or 4. And it's just the top 1 or 2 who make money. So I think those 2 berths need to get determined in India. There's a challenger. He necessarily hasn't reached there. There is one guy who leads the pack completely. It doesn't look like he's going to relinquish his chair to anybody. I think the other 2 who have not taken a position would be vying for that second position or that second pole position over there. And I think that's very important to say who takes it. Is it Idea or is it Voda? And I think these auctions are pivotal to take that position, because spectrum is contingent to the capacities you create and the consumer experience that you provide. So whether it's 3G or 4G, the right bets need to be taken by both of them. And let's see who does it. On share ability to spend money and the size of the balance sheet, obviously Vodafone has a strength. Even from a technological know-how, they have a great advantage because they're a global player. But Idea has always surprised everybody. So let's see who comes out as a fair winner. I mean, those 2 have to really fight hard for that second position, because the real money making happens at the first 2 slots, and then the next 2 slots, the money making comes down significantly across the globe. So it's important to get that position.
Right, Rajan Mathews, very quickly, I know you, COAI and Reliance Jio are really, in a volley of words, really on a whole host of issues. But everybody in the market is expecting that the turbulence has only begun as far as Reliance Jio's entry is concerned. And this auction will further expedite the entire process of consolidation and M&A in the sector. And as Sanjay was pointing out, players like Idea and Vodafone will really need to come up with a plan B. Your thoughts on how big a challenger is Reliance Jio really going to be post these auctions?
So Gauri, first of all, when you look at the parameters set in terms of ownership, no incumbent can own more than 25% of the total capacity of spectrum. So by definition, they've got to be at least 4 players in the marketplace. There can be smaller ones, but that's the sort of ceiling which you get. So I think to expect that there are 4 players is quite fair. and so you would have, the big players positioning, certainly RIL, Jio coming in, Idea, Voda, Airtel, and perhaps some consolidation among the others, as is already happening. So ultimately, the spectrum, if you play your cards right, that upper limit, if you run your operations well, you should have a fair degree of spread between the four. And all four of these operators are pretty good at operations. You can't say anyone is far and away superior to grab a far and away superior market share on the revenue side. So I think there's going to be a fair degree of spread.
Right.
And so we will have four robust players in the marketplace, no doubt.
Right. Prashant Sighal, very quickly, we've spent 20 minutes talking about the top three operators. What about, Tata Tele, Aircel, Arcom? They've also submitted their EMTs, expected to really buy back spectrum, at least in one or two circles. Do you expect these players to survive till the next round of auctions?
Yeah, Gauri, I think there's been consolidation in the market, as you would have, I'm sure, read, heard, and picked up. So clearly, our Aircel, Arcom, MTS, all coming together is nothing but creating a large organization. And I think it's also very important for us to understand that there is segmentation in the market. There is enough in the market. Everybody may not play the same game across the bands. I mean, just if you look at the aviation market, there are low cost and there are premium airlines,
right.
and that's the kind of segmentation that you may see in this market coming up. So to answer your question, yes, there would be survival. I mean, these companies do make EBITDA margins. It's not that they are negative EBITDA margins. They are both positive EBITDA margins. I think it's the financial structuring and the investments that they've made in the past which is leading them to a loss situation. So if the debt gets converted into equity, and if the spectrum prices are not as high as they are, and the tariffs are slightly more sensible, which it has to be in this country, I think these players easily would survive, and there are synergy benefits. They would survive at least for the next and the next auction. I mean, if it's a 2-year game, I clearly see all of them being intact in the next 2 years.
All right, Prashant Sighal, Rajan Mathews, Naveen, Kulkarni, and of course Sanjay Kapoor. Many thanks for joining me on this very special show on spectrum auctions that are of course going to start tomorrow. The unanimous verdict really is that government is not going to be able to achieve its massive target of 56,000 crore rupees. So to that extent, it will be a failure. But this auction could really determine consolidation in the sector, M&A in the sector, and of course will determine who would be the big boys who will survive in Indian telecom. Thanks so much for watching.
Find us on Facebook at facebook.com/ETNow and don't forget to click the like button. You can also follow us on Twitter at ETNowLive. To stay updated with all our programming, hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel by logging on to youtube.com/user/ETNow.